Hello and welcome to a Fishelbrand tutorial. So I've put out a lot of videos on like how to build the deck, but I haven't really explained how to play the deck in depth. You know, you've seen me play it, but seeing someone play is a lot different than explaining why I'm doing what I'm doing and kind of all the intricacies there. So this video is going to be kind of short. I'm just going to kind of go through every situation I can think of and kind of explain in detail how this deck works, how to play it, and you know, if you're just starting out playing this deck, this is a place to start. Watch this, then you can watch my other videos, then start testing on your own. So this is the list that I'm going to be testing. I'm kind of back and forth between chromatic spheres, stars, and lotus petals. So you can kind of test, you know, maybe replace some of these with lotus petals, or maybe replace serum visions with lotus petal, something like that. Test what works for you. I plan on eventually doing a simulation to optimize this deck, but at the moment, I honestly don't know what's better between some minor cases of these cards, which I'll go through one by one. But first, for those who are just starting out, I'm going to explain the deck and how it works. Basically, this deck is centered around playing high converted mana cost creatures for cheap. And you do that by Delve. So Delve lets you exile cards from your graveyard instead of spending the mana cost. So Gurmag Angler and Shambling Attendants most of the time cost 1 mana, but their converted mana cost is 7 and 8. And that's really important for Rush of Knowledge, which lets you draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. So if you have Shambling Attendants in play, Rush of Knowledge becomes 5 mana, draw 8 cards, which is really, really good. But that's a bit expensive. So to make mana, we also have cards that add mana based on the converted mana cost. So Energy Tap is the best. You just tap your creature and you get colorless mana equal to the mana cost. So for 1 mana, you can get 7 or 8 colorless mana, which is very, very good. And then Burnt Offering, it's an instant. You sacrifice the creature, but this adds black or red in any combination. And that's really useful for giving us the black mana to cast like future rituals, but red mana, then we can filter through Manamorphose to add more blue. So it's really, really good. But the downside of Burnt Offering is it kills your creature. So you can't go like Burnt Offering into Rush of Knowledge because you don't have a creature in play. So the best sequence with Burnt Offering would be cast Rush of Knowledge, have 1 mana floating, then play Burnt Offering. We're going to go through it. I'm going to like goldfish the deck and show you, but just on a high level, Energy Tap you cast before Rush of Knowledge, Burnt Offering you cast after Rush of Knowledge most of the time. Our lands, they're most of them are enters tapped sacrifice lands. So we have 4 Ancient Spring, and this card's in here mostly because you can tap it for blue before you sacrifice it. So we're running 4 Careful Study, 4 Preordain, and 3 Serum Visions. And getting that early blue is really, really good for Careful Study fills our graveyard so we can delve, and then all of these cantrips basically dig us through our deck to find cards like Rush of Knowledge or Energy Tap, things like that. So basically this lets us dig through our deck before we combo off. Saprozan Scary is probably the most powerful card in the deck. Like, you want Saprozan Scary in all of your opening hands because it adds 2 mana. So you play turn 1 Saprozan Scary tapped, and then it untaps. You can play like Preordain and Serum Visions in the same turn, or like Preordain Careful Study, and you're really just set up to go off turn 3 most of the time when you play Saprozan Scary. Sulfur Vent gives us red and black, so you need at least 1 black mana the turn you go off to play the Gurmag Angler or Shambling Attendants. So Ancient Spring sacrifices to give you black, Sulfur Vent sacrifices to give you red, which can cast Manamorphose and then give you black, or in a really dire situation you can just tap it for black. You're down 1 mana, but then you have the right color, so it's kind of whatever. And then we have 3 Chromatic Stars and Chromatic Spheres that you can sacrifice to filter colors. And people ask why I don't run all of one. The Stars and Spheres are good in different situations. So Chromatic Star says when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So if your opponent kills it and you didn't sacrifice it, you still get to draw a card. But this is a triggered ability when this dies that gives your opponent time to respond. So with Chromatic Sphere, basically, you sacrifice it, you draw a card, that all happens, and you maintain priority. With Chromatic Star, your opponent gets priority. So like, if they have Graveyard Hate, for example, like a Relic, they can crack Relic of Progenitus after you sacrifice your Chromatic Star, before you can cast a Delve creature. So, you know, there are important intricacies between these two where if you're trying to resolve a Delve creature through Graveyard Hate, Chromatic Sphere is great because you can just sacrifice them all. Sacrificing lands is a mana ability, so they can't respond to that either. So you can just like have a bunch of spheres and lands in play, sacrifice them all and delve a creature before they can even respond. Where with Star, they can respond. So an important distinction to put in there. Dark Ritual is a way for us to be able to cast Rush of Knowledge and still have mana up. Ideally, our going off sequence involves casting Energy Tap, tapping our creature, getting a bunch of colorless, then casting Rush of Knowledge, and then you have like a black floating, you cast Burnt Offering, and you just generate a ton of mana, draw a bunch of cards, and you just kind of keep repeating that till you loop through the deck. And then eventually you go through your deck, you find Rolling Thunder, X damage divided as you choose. Normally we just target the opponent's face and burn them out for 20, 25, however much life they have. So that's kind of the main deck base game plan. Brain Spoil is there to transmute to find more Rush of Knowledges, because, you know, drawing 8 cards is pretty powerful. So that's the main deck. The sideboard, there's actually quite a few different sideboard configurations we've been going through, and I'm going to work through each one separately. So I'm not going to talk about that yet. I'm going to just work through the main deck. And then once we kind of get that figured out, I'll show you guys what the sideboarding is for. So let's jump into a game and I'll start Goldfishing and show you guys how to play it. I guess I should show this for those who don't know. So if you're wanting to practice a combo deck in particular, you can go to the constructed tournament practice queues, create a lobby, but make it a 1-player lobby. Probably don't put watchers. And then you can play by yourself in this Goldfishing mode. That is what I'm going to show you. There's no opponent, no time limit. And this is the best place to just practice the deck until you've got it down. So I think this is a pretty keepable hand. I guess we'll just walk through. Obviously not going to be chatting with everybody. We're going to walk through how we're going to play this hand. So we have 2 Delve creatures, not ideal, but we have a way to discard them with Careful Study. And we have a Sappers and Scary. So in this hand, what we need to go off is we have the Delve creatures. We have a Burnt Offering. So we either need Energy Tap plus Rush of Knowledge or Dark Ritual plus Rush of Knowledge. And then we can Burnt Offering after the Rush of Knowledge. So we're going to keep this hand and we're going to kind of see what happens. Sappers and Scary means we can play like Serum Visions plus Chromatic Study or Careful Study. Double Serum Vision is also good. So we're going to lead on the land. And you want to hit your land drops the first 2 turns of the game at least, because you need 2 lands to go off. So we have all these cantrips, and we need to know sequencing is very important as well. So Serum Visions is generally good to cast first because you draw a card, you get information, and then you get to scry. We kind of need a lot of cards, right? We need a land, we need Rush of Knowledge, we need Energy Tap, we need Dark Ritual. So when we cast Serum Visions, we're going to draw an unknown card. And okay, we drew Rush of Knowledge, so now we can scry Rush of Knowledge to the bottom because we only wanted 1. As far as Dark Ritual and Preordain goes, I don't think I want Preordain because we already have all these other blue cantrips that we're trying to cast. Dark Ritual is pretty good, but I would prefer Energy Tap, so I think I'm going to scry this to the bottom. We also want to try and hit a land drop this turn, so we're going to bottom that. And now I'm going to cast Careful Study because it draws us 2 deep to try and hit a land, where Serum Visions only goes 1. Okay, so we missed a land, but we can discard 2 Delve creatures, being Shambling Attendants and Gurmag Angler, because we already have the backup Shambling Attendants. And so now we have everything we need. We're just missing 1 more land, right? We can make black. Yeah, we need 1 more land to go off, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's only turn 2. So if we draw land here, Chromatic Sphere. This is the downside of Sappers and Scary, is now we're Scary locked, because as soon as we tap this for mana, it's going to go away because it sacrifices. That might still be worth it. So what we're trying to set up here is putting Shambling Attendants into play, casting Energy Tap, and then casting Rush of Knowledge. And we have all those pieces in hand. The question is it better to wait with Sappers and Scary available to try and draw more lands, or do we sacrifice the Scary this turn to try and draw lands we can use to put like these stars into play? And I think it's better to sacrifice the Scary. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cast Serum Visions, And we can bottom that, but Ancient Spring is nice. So we're going to put Spring on top. And then I can either Careful Study or Preordain. I don't really want to discard much to this Careful Study, so let's Preordain. Alright, we can put Careful Study on the bottom, put Ancient Spring on top. Now we play the Spring. So this is a little bit of a slow start, but that's okay. Because now we have Sulfur Vent. So we can cast, probably in this situation, we're assuming it's game 1, so opponent doesn't have Graveyard Hate. So playing Chromatic Star makes the most sense. We play our second land, and now we're set to go off. So this is a bit of a slow start, unfortunately, but our hand is very robust, and we should just be able to go through our whole deck right now. So our graveyard's full. We have 7 cards in our graveyard, and that just kind of happens naturally as you're digging through your deck with these cantrips. Careful Study being particularly important in filling the graveyard, but you have to remember also that the lands are going to fill your graveyard, and the Chromatic Stars will fill your graveyard too. So we're going to sacrifice our lands. That fills our graveyard. And now we want to put Shambling Attendants in play. So do that. With this current build, it doesn't matter what you delve, because there's no way to get stuff back from the graveyard. But in other builds, it does matter. So we have Shambling Attendants, and now we can energy tap because we know we're going to want to do that. So this gives us a lot of colorless mana to work with. And I always say it's better to defer or wait as long as possible to use your mana filtering. So we have Chromatic Star in play. We know we want at least 1 blue mana to cast a Rush of Knowledge. So let's just play 1 Rush of Knowledge. So we're going to sacrifice... This deck doesn't use white mana, so I just sacrificed that to make this cleanup. Now we can cast Rush of Knowledge using the colorless. The most important thing here is you want to use your colorless mana as much as possible. Basically, if you can avoid tapping for avoid using any other colored mana aside from colorless, then do it. So now we've cast Rush of Knowledge, and we have another Shambling Attendants. We also have Rolling Thunder, and 2 Burnt Offerings. So we can't quite kill them. A good shortcut for knowing how much mana you have is with Shambling Attendants, Burnt Offering effectively adds 7 mana. It costs 1 and it adds 8, so you're plus 7. So right now we have 5 mana. So this Burnt Offering will put us up to 12 mana, and then Shambling Attendants will put us down to 11, and then this Burnt Offering will put us up to 18 mana. So we need at least 1 more Burnt Offering or energy tap before we can kill them with Rolling Thunder. So probably casting Rush of Knowledge is ideal. So now we have this hand, and this is where things get very, very important of making sure you can go off. You want to sequence your mana generation in a way that, like I said before, uses colorless mana as much as possible. But we also know that we're going to have to cast Burnt Offering here to generate enough mana for Rush. So with this sequence, I think I'm going to cast Manamorphose, because we know Manamorphose is great when you have 2 colors of mana you want to use. So we're going to cast Burnt Offering and Rush of Knowledge. So we're going to add black, blue. Okay, and we just drew an energy tap, which is awesome. So now we Burnt Offering the Shambling Attendants. I think we can actually just win here. So with Burnt Offering, you want mostly black mana, but you need some amount of red mana to cast Manamorphose in the future. So you want red mana floating. So I'm going to add, I think in this situation, I'm going to add 4 and 4. The reason for 4 and 4 is we have Rolling Thunder, and I think we can just win with this Rolling Thunder. I don't even think we have to cast Rush of Knowledge. So let's do the math here. We have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Shambling Attendants, wait, let me double count. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Shambling Attendants will put us down to 11 mana. Energy Tap is the same as Burnt Offering, so it costs 1, it adds 7. So we're going to be up to 18. And then we Burnt Offering, that's going to put us up to 25 mana. And so we have a kill right here. We don't even have to cast another Rush of Knowledge. So play the Attendants. We Energy Tap. We Burnt Offering. And then we Rolling Thunder. We're our own opponent, so we're going to kill ourselves here, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. So why can I keep going? I don't know. But maybe this doesn't work in Goldfishing, but you can see we have 25 mana here. So I should be able to do this for 23, and that kills us. So we just successfully went off. it was turn 5, I think. This turn 4 is wrong, but if we had hit a land on turn 2, we would have been able to go off turn 3. So that's pretty awesome. Let's go through another example because that was super easy. All right, so here's an example of a hand we don't keep. You want at least one land in your opening hand, so we're going to mulligan. This hand is pretty good. We have Rush of Knowledge plus a Delve creature plus a Preordain and 2 lands. So we're going to keep this hand. I'm actually going to bottom one of the Manamorphos. Manamorphos are really good in the late game, but you really don't want to have to cast a Manamorphos to go off, because generally you're going to be using that to generate 1 mana, and you want to get maximum value out of every single Manamorphos that you cast. I think that's kind of one common mistake that probably people make, is kind of flippantly using Manamorphos kind of wherever they want, but this card generates 2 mana in any combination of colors, and if you're not using it to get 2 important mana, you're not playing this deck as optimally as it can. So we're gonna bottom that because we have no way to generate red. But other than that, our hand is pretty good. So we're gonna lead on. Second Shambling Attendance is not ideal. So we're gonna play our land and then untap and Preordain. Ooh, okay, so here's an interesting situation between Preordain and Serum Visions. And it's actually important which one you cast, right? Preordain scries and then draws. Serum Visions draws and then scries. So Serum Visions is more, well, Preordain is just a better card, but Serum Visions is better to cast when you're looking for more than just one piece, because maybe you draw one of the 2 pieces and then you can scry duplicates to the bottom, right? So we need either Energy Tap or Dark Ritual in this hand, and Chromatic Star or Sphere would also be very helpful. We have none of those, so we're going to Serum Visions first, because if we find one of those 3, then we can scry secondary copies to the bottom, and then we can Preordain to find the missing pieces. And so we found a Chromatic Sphere. We don't really need more Rush or Brain Spoil, so we're going to bottom both of those. Then we play our land. So now we're at turn 3, and we need 1 more land. We drew a Dark Ritual, which is also very good. So there's multiple ways to go off with this deck. The ideal way is Energy Tap plus Delve Creature. That's the best way. It generates the most mana. But the rituals are in here because you can't always find an Energy Tap. There's only 4 in the deck. So Dark Ritual is a way to get you from basically over the 6 mana hump. You need 6 mana at least to go off, right? Shambling Attendance, Rush of Knowledge. So with 3 lands, you can cast a Rush of Knowledge with no mana floating, but we don't have any way to generate mana after that. So Dark Ritual is basically a way, if you have 3 lands, you can go Ritual, Shambling Attendance, Rush of Knowledge, and then you have 2 mana floating that can either, you can cast an Energy Tap or Burnt Offering after the Rush and then go off that way. So we need to find 1 more land. So I'm going to Preordain here, trying to hit a land or another Dark Ritual actually. So Dark Ritual is the same as a land because the lands cost 0 and they add 2. Dark Ritual costs 1 and adds 3. So instead of a land, we could just get this Dark Ritual, and I think I'm kind of down for that. I don't want this Chromatic Star yet because we kind of just want to dig deeper, and it seems like mana is going to be a constraint. So we're going to bottom the Chromatic Star, top this Dark Ritual, and then we're going to play Chromatic Sphere for next turn. So, okay, there's our Burnt Offering. Okay, so here's a good example of the Burnt Offering avenue of comboing off. So we're going to sacrifice our Ancient Springs, and Dark Ritual we're just going to cast. So we need blue mana, and there's 2 ways we can get this blue mana. We can either Manamorphose, actually there's kind of a lot of ways. So we can Chromatic Sphere for blue, that's the most straightforward way. We can Chromatic Sphere for red and then cast Manamorphose and then Rush of Knowledge, or we can just Manamorphose for blue. I think the best way here is to just Chromatic Sphere for blue, because we have Burnt Offering to generate red, which we can then use to Manamorphose later on. So we're going to add blue. And this also draws a card in case we find something else. We didn't, but now our graveyard has 7 cards, so we can Shambling Attendance here. So we delve. And now we're going to cast Rush. We don't need any white. We're just going to save all of this black. And now we have Burnt Offering at the ready to generate more mana. So I'm going to play Dark Ritual just for safety. Now we can Burnt Offering away this Shambling Attendant to give us some red mana, and we might actually have a win again. This deck is very, very easy, so I guess we're gonna Burnt Offering again. Somebody had a bunch of black, but our mana, we might be able to get there. We have 8, 9, 10, 11. So Shambling Attendance is gonna put us down to 10. Energy Tap is going to put us up to 17. And then Burnt Offering is going to put us up to 24. So we need to cast one Careful Study to fill our graveyard for Shambling Attendance, but that still puts us up to 23, which is lethal. So, all right, we have another win here. So we're going to Manamorphose. This is going to add blue, blue. Ooh, Island is also very nice. The one basic island is really useful. So now I can Careful Study, and that will fill our Delve, discarding Ancient Spring and Burnt Offering, I guess. So now our graveyard's full. We can play Shambling Attendance here. And if we do our math right, always double check your math. 7, 8, 9 plus 7 is going to be 16 plus 7 is going to be 23. And that's exactly lethal. So we Energy Tap, we Burnt Offering, and then Rolling Thunder. That is 8 plus 4 is 12 plus 11 is 23. There you go. And if you wanted to keep going, we could play Gurmag Angler and then do more of that, but Rolling Thunder for lethal here seems pretty good. Rolling Thunder for 20, X equals 20. Whoa, what? Why do I have to pay 20? Oh, I see, yeah. So we just pay all this mana, and that's another game win. That was a turn 4 win. So there you go. I'm going to try and find a harder situation. The deck, basically, once you draw Rolling Thunder, you almost always can go off. So we're going to keep going. Ooh, this hand is a little sketchy. But I think we have to keep it because it has Rush of Knowledge, plus Energy Tap, plus Burnt Offering, and a land, and a cantrip. So we just need to find a second land and a Delve creature, and then we can go off. So we will keep this hand, but 3 Rush of Knowledge is not ideal, and a second Burnt Offering is not ideal either. So this is kind of on the sketchier side of things that I would keep, because probably we're going to have to discard these Rush of Knowledge to Careful Study, and then things get a little bit dubious with respect to like us digging through our entire deck, right? Every Rush of Knowledge you discard is 8 cards less deep into your deck you're going to dig, so try to avoid discarding these as much as possible, but if you have to discard them, it's okay. You can still find your Rolling Thunder eventually. So here, we have an option. We can cast Preordain, or we can just wait a turn. I think I'm going to Preordain because I want to find more cantrips in the upcoming turns. So we do not want to Brain Spoil, but Careful Study is kind of great because we can discard a Burnt Offering at the very least. And it's just a good way to get rid of some of the cards in our hand. So now we also need cards in our graveyard to like delve a Gurmag Angler, for example. So right now we have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we need a little bit more help here because the mana situation right now is sketchy, because if we sacrifice the Ancient Springs, we only get black-white, so we don't have any blue mana. And we want 2 blue and 2 black. That way we can go spend a black, cast Gurmag Angler, Energy Tap it, Rush of Knowledge, and then Burnt Offering. So we ideally would like to find like a Chromatic Star into Manamorphose or something like that. So we're going to cast Careful Study and see what we draw. Okay, we definitely don't want another Burnt Offering, but having 2 could be useful. I think I'm going to discard one of these Rush of Knowledge. I know I just went on and on about how you want them, but I think 2 Burnt Offering could be useful. So I think we got to go for it. At this point, it's already turn 4. Like, this deck benefits from being fast, and we have all the mana we need. Dark Ritual gives us extra mana, so we can like tap an Ancient Spring for blue instead of sacrificing it. We also have Chromatic Star to add blue, so I think we can do this. So we're going to sacrifice an Ancient Spring, cast a Dark Ritual, then play Gurmag Angler, and I'm waiting to sacrifice this one because I'm not exactly sure yet if I need to tap it for blue or sacrifice it. I think I'm going to be tapping it for blue though. So we're going to spend this black. I'm going to sacrifice this to add blue, and that can kind of inform my decision on what to do with Ancient Spring. So we're going to add blue, sacrificing for white, because white is basically just colorless in this deck. Oh, Shambling Attendants. I guess I should have cracked Chromatic Star first. You basically always want Shambling Attendants over Gurmag Angler if possible because it adds 1 more mana and it draws 1 more card off Rush of Knowledge. I think at this point we're kind of too far committed though. We don't have enough like way to generate Delve, so we're going to Energy Tap and then tap this for blue to cast Rush of Knowledge. Okay, so now our hand is pretty good. We can Dark Ritual, and what else am I going to do? We have a Rush of Knowledge, but I would like 2 Shambling Attendants for that rush. And we only have access to 1 blue mana at the moment. So we're going to Chromatic Sphere for blue before we do anything. Okay, Serum Visions we're not going to cast, so I'm going to Burnt Offering away this Gurmag Angler. I think I'm going to go up to 3 red and then a lot of black. Cast a Shambling Attendants because this draws us 1 card deeper, and that missed draw on the first rush might cost us here because now we really need to find a blue mana source, either Chromatic Sphere or Star or something like that. So we're gonna go down to 3 and 3. We're gonna go down to 2 and 4. Okay, so we have basically unlimited black mana. But with our current hand, we only have 1 blue mana. So probably keeping that original Rush of Knowledge probably was a mistake to discard it because we could just cast it right now and that would be way better. With this hand though, I think we're going to have to transmute a Brain Spoil for that card because for some reason we haven't hit a single Manamorphose yet, but hopefully that will change. So we're going to play Chromatic Sphere, and this is going to give us blue because we know we need a blue mana. And I'm going to use my red because I can get more red off Burnt Offering. No, I'll use my black. Because I can get more black off Burnt Offering as well. We're going to add blue and draw a card. Okay, Metamorphose is very helpful right now. Okay, so now we can kind of go off. We can cast Dark Ritual. I can Metamorphose away red, black for double blue. Basically with Metamorphose, you always want to add blue. Like... 99.99% of the time, Manamorphose should add double blue because that's going to give you all the blue mana you need to fully go off. So now we kind of have all the mana we need. We can Energy Tap the Shambling Attendants. Now we can transmute this Brain Spoil for a Rush of Knowledge and cast Rush of Knowledge. And we still have another blue floating, which is really good. Okay, so Basic Island, I think we're going to play, but we want to wait to play Basic Island until we know for sure that we can go off, because as a failsafe, you'd much rather have a land that taps for 2 mana than 1. So we're out of Rush of Knowledge, so at this point we just have to dig to try and find the Torch. Or Rolling Thunder, I think. And we definitely have enough mana generation, so let's start with Preordain digs the deepest. So let's Preordain here. And I don't want any of these. Energy Tap is cool, but actually, do I need an Energy Tap? I might need Energy Tap because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 14 is not enough to be lethal. So if we are going to go off, we're going to need at least one of these. And we've already used 1, 2, 3. So that'll be the 4th. We've used 1, 2, 3 burnt offerings. So as weird as that is, I think I'm gonna bottom it. That is the 4th one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we bottom this, basically we won't have access to any more energy taps. I have to top it because we need the mana. That's pretty unfortunate, but now we can play Chromatic Sphere here and crack this for blue. Okay, we draw another Careful Study. Let's cast another Preordain. Really digging for, there we go. Putting both of these on top is great. Okay, now we're pretty safe. So we can Burnt Offering this, get a bunch of red, and I can Manamorphose to draw the Chromatic Star, using red that for double blue. I can play Shambling Attendants. Okay, I think we might actually be able to win this, despite, you know, this is probably the hardest win we could imagine because we're down 1 Rush of Knowledge and all that, but we're continuously scrying cards to the bottom of our library. I think I've scryed like 6 to the bottom or something. So we know that the rolling what is it? Rolling Thunder is in the top like 7 cards of our library, which means we only have to cast like 2 Serum Visions to get there. So I'm going to energy tap the Shambling Attendants because we're going to have to do that anyway. Then we're going to cast Serum Visions before we crack the star. Are we? Maybe not. I'm just going to cast Preordain. Let's start with Preordain. Shambling Attendants, no. Dark Ritual. It's actually not that useful, I don't think. So we put that on the bottom as well. Okay, there's Rolling Thunder. And I think we can get there. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I can cast a Shambling Attendants and then energy tap it. So Shambling Attendants here, we're going to, at this point, just play the island. Energy tap the Shambling Attendants, and that's lethal. So, dug through a whole deck, missing one of our, what is it? Yeah, actually, it's very important that we played the island there instead of the Chromatic Star, because the island it would have costed 1 mana. But yeah, we dug through a whole deck, missing 1 Rush of Knowledge because we discarded it early. Probably should have kept it. I know I went on a whole rampage about that. But that's an example of kind of digging through a whole deck to get there. Maybe let's move to sideboarding now, because I think hopefully that gave you an idea of like important things to consider in sequencing. You really want to cast Manamorphose for max value there. You saw when we were going off there, every single blue mana mattered so much because we ended the game with no blue mana left and used the exact amount of mana to combo off. And that's because both Manamorphose added exactly double blue mana that we were able to cast all these cantrips and finish. So now we're going to move to sideboarding. So with this build of the deck right now, this is kind of like the most standard sideboard setup you can imagine. We're going to go through sideboarding for control mirror matches, or not control mirror matches, but control matchups. And so with control matchups, we want to slow things down. We're bringing in all these Giga Drows. We're bringing in 2 basic islands, basically to just maximize our amount of blue sources. With control matchups, we want to hit land drops. And so these Dark Rituals and Cabal Ritual are not as necessary, as well as we need to make a few more cuts here. I think you're more likely to draw into things, so Brain Spoil is not as important either. And then depending on the matchup, you can bring in other things like Duress, Serum Visions, more Dispels. And what do we want to cut for those? I think I would probably end up cutting some number of, like, I would cut a Careful Study for a Serum Visions for sure. Because Serum Visions is card neutral, whereas Careful Study puts you down cards. So this just helps you dig deeper for like a long game. You could bring in like 1 copy of Dispel. I would maybe cut like a Gurmag Angler for that. So yeah, we're going to try this build. You know, depending on the matchup, you might want Duress over Dispel, but we're going to say your opponent is like a very, very heavy controlling deck. And so we're going to bring in all of these cards and run it. So with this sideboarding, with Giga Draws in particular, what you're looking for is a hand that can play Giga Draws, and you probably need Giga Draws plus Dispel, or 2 Giga Draws against like a really heavy control deck, maybe like Tron or some controlling Skred variants. And the idea is you tap down all of their mana, and the reason you need 2 is Giga Draws taps their mana, but they can use a counter spell to counter 1 copy of Giga Draws, and then keep like 1 mana untapped for them to have like Dispel or Red Elemental Blast or something like that. So the second copy of Giga Draws basically taps down all the remaining lands, or Dispel can counter the spell that they cast. So you kind of need 2 levels of insurance. This hand is pretty bad. You really want a land heavy hand against control players, or a hand that can find lands pretty easily. This hand, it's not great, but I think I have to keep it because it has almost everything we need. It's got Giga Draws, which is kind of the card we're looking for. It has Serum Visions to dig. It's got a Delve creature. It has Burnt Offering and a Sphere. So I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to get rid of Careful Study because this game is going to take a little bit longer. We don't want to be like burning cards in our hand. So we're going to bottom that. Also, bottom Careful Study on mulligans makes sense because Careful Study is card disadvantage. So let's say you have 7 cards in your hand when you cast it. You cast Careful Study, so you're down to 6. And then you draw 2 and discard 2. So you're still down to 6 cards after you cast a Careful Study. So on mulligans, I like keeping Serum Visions more because, you know, you cast it with 7 cards in hand, you draw a card, and you're still up to 7 cards. Okay, Metamorphose is also pretty good. So we're going to lead on Sulfur Vent. Dispel, okay, so we're very set up for the late game. We just got to find land. So I'm going to play Chromatic Sphere and pass turn. Energy Tap is also good. So this is actually a situation I normally don't like cracking spheres before going off, but we don't really have another option, right? We kind of want to hit land drops every turn, and casting Serum Visions really helps us dig for lands. So we're going to crack this for blue, and now we get to play Serum Visions, and we get to bottom both of these Metamorphos. And we actually have to discard the hand size. This is unfortunate. Yeah, because I can't cast anything else. What do I discard? I think at this point I discard a Serum Visions. So you gotta just play with the deck and like play test it a lot to know what's going to help. This is a very unfortunate draw and sequence of draws. So maybe we're not gonna win this game. You know, it happens, but testing these situations can help you maximize your points. So I went on a whole thing before about how Serum Visions is, you know, very good with mulligans. But if you're already going to be discarding the hand size, Serum Visions only digs you 1 card at a time, and then it scries 2 to, you know, for your next draw. So I was hoping with this Serum Visions to put bottom 2 cards, and then when I draw on my upkeep, I can hit a land. Careful Study draws 2 cards at once, so like, let's say we find an untapped blue source, we can Careful Study right away to try and find another blue source sooner. So I'm going to keep Careful Study and actually discard the Serum Visions. Man, this is very unfortunate. This is an interesting situation, actually. It depends. If your opponent is playing like a control deck and they've tapped out in a point like this, it's almost worth just trying to go for the combo instead of continuing, because we're discarding cards to hand. They're putting lands in play and drawing like more counter spells. I think we're just gonna keep playing though. I don't think you can really go off with this hand. So unfortunately we have to discard, but discarding does fill up our graveyard, so that's marginally relevant. We can discard a Burnt Offering because we have 2. Okay, there's our land. So now we're kind of ready. We have Sappers and Scary. We untap. There's our Brain Spoil. Man, this is super unfortunate. So you have a couple options. We can try and end of turn Sappers and Scary down like 2 permanents with a Giga Drowse. That's probably our best shot with this hand. It's just going for the win right now. Maybe your opponent, like, turn 5, they tap low for a Mole Drifter or something. It's probably better to try this. So we're going to actually... I think we have to discard this Brain Spoil. We have to discard a hand size, unfortunately. Yeah, let's discard Brain Spoil. Let's see what happens. So we're basically going to say, like, we're passing to our opponent's turn. They have permanents in play, and we're going to Giga Drowse down some of their permanents, so that way they only have maybe 1 interactive spell up on our turn, and then we can use Dispel to counter that spell. So we're going to kind of mimic that. So we're going to tap Sappers and Scary, Giga Drowse, sure. So unfortunately we don't have an opponent here, but we're basically showing what would happen. We burn the Giga Drowse on their turn, and then we're going to untap and as best as we can hold up Dispel while still comboing off. So we want to fill the graveyard, so we're definitely going to sacrifice, and I guess at this point we're going to cast a Careful Study first. Okay, so there's our Rush of Knowledge and Metamorphose are both good. We can discard Brain Spoil and Burnt Offering. And again, we're trying to go through this while still holding up Dispel. I think it's doable. So we can sacrifice Sulfur Vent. We can cast Metamorphose, adding red, blue. So we got to think about what we're trying to accomplish here. We want to hold up blue at all times. We are going to... I don't know if we can hold up Dispel, actually. We definitely need to add black, because we need to cast Shambling Attendants. What I want to do is Metamorphose. I want to be able to energy tap and Metamorphose, but I don't know if that's actually possible here. So we have a couple options. Let's assume we need to hold up Dispel to win, like we know they have a counterspell or something. So we need this blue mana up. This is a pretty interesting decision. We're not just dead. We can Manamorphose and add black, and then if we draw a delve creature, we can use 1 black to cast Shambling Attendants, then use the second black to cast Burnt Offering, sacrificing Shambling Attendants, adding red, and then black. So we can use the remaining black to cast the new delve creature, and then the red to cast Manamorphose, to add blue to go Energy Tap Rush of Knowledge. That might be our best shot. I'm trying to think of other things we can add. So we can add blue, but that doesn't do anything. I think our best shot is to hit another delve creature. It's a pretty low value play, but like, what else can we do, right? We add blue, then we go Shambling Attendants, Energy Tap, and then we only have 1 blue floating. We can add red, but then we have no way to get an extra blue to Energy Tap. So I think in this sequence, we actually are going to add black mana. Then we're going to Shambling Attendants, because again, we're pretending that we need this blue for Dispel to counter them killing our Shambling Attendants or something. Now we're going to Burnt Offering this Shambling Attendants. 3, I guess I'll add 4, and then a lot of black. Now we Manamorphose this red or blue. Okay, Chromatic Star is kind of nice, so let's Preordain, because we just gotta find a delve creature now. Bottom. Energy Tap. Okay, Chromatic Star can get rid of some of this. So we're really deep into it, right? But I think this gives us our best shot of going off. We're going to add blue, getting rid of some red. Okay, so we whiffed. That's unfortunate, but I don't know if we had another avenue to try and win. Maybe keeping Serum Visions off that Preordain would have been better because it digs us 3 deeper. And we have the mana, right? As soon as we find a delve creature, we can play the creature, then play Energy Tap, and then Rush of Knowledge. So I'm going to concede because, well, yeah, you're pretty much dead in this position. But let's see if we had dug like 2 deeper. Wow, we were all right. We were a ways away. So that's a game that we probably couldn't win. But it's these types of like niche scenarios where you need to have a long-term plan and know your outs. In that case, adding blue to try and Energy Tap the Shambling Attendants we currently had just wasn't a way we could win because we were so limited on blue. So by drawing 2 other delve creatures, it gave us a route to still win the game while holding up Dispel. And we lost. That's unfortunate, but it's better than just conceding before we even go for it. All right, so that's kind of a primer on some of the niche scenarios. So basically, I'm going to keep reiterating, pay attention to what mana you're using, what mana you're going to need, and try and get maximum value out of every single colored mana source you have. Wait as long as possible to crack your Chromatic Spheres and cast your Manamorphose for mana, and use colorless mana first before you use any other color. White is basically colorless, so I use that first, but just saying that. So that's kind of the deck in a nutshell and how you play it in most of the situations. I did sideboarding against control. Basically, you're trying to set up for a Giga Drowse, tap them down, and then have another Giga Drowse to like tap their untapped mana, or have like a Dispel to counter any like secondary interaction they have. It's a lot trickier, but the games are slower, so you have more time to build up to it. I think for those, it's pretty hard to show in Goldfishing, so whenever I release my next official Fishelbrand video, you'll see more of the sideboarding things, but countering the main deck, I think, is the important part. So that's where we got that. And then there are some other niche cases that are important. I think Exile in my Discord, you can talk to him, or he posted some other Fishelbrand variants on the subreddit that try and play around Weather the Storm. That's the card that's particularly important for us to know how to beat as well. So the decks that play Weather the Storm or Prismatic Strands, basically any way to negate the damage done by Rolling Thunder is a problem, because this does X, and if they gain like 100 life, we're not killing them. So we have a couple ways to beat them. The way I've been doing it is I keep Rolling Thunder in because the odds of them having Weather the Storm are pretty low. This is mostly like Stompy or Boggles or any like elves any of the green decks will probably bring in Weather the Storm against us. And if they have 2 mana up, we have to assume they have Weather the Storm. And our storm count's like 30 or something. So it's pretty unlikely that we're going to be able to kill them. So in that sideboarding, we have a couple options. The one that I've been doing is kill their creatures, empty their hand, gain a bunch of life, and then just put a bunch of big creatures into play. That's a pretty good option most of the time. From what I've seen in testing, when we go off and they Weather the Storm, they usually go up to about 100 life. And so if you can put like 3 Gurmag Anglers and like a Shambling Attendants into play, you can attack for maybe 20 a turn. So in 5 turns, you should be able to kill them. So to kind of play around that, we basically have a sideboard set up to, we don't even really need Weather the Storm, but wipe the board and empty their hand. So we can bring in Scattershot if they're playing a deck with a lot of creatures. So we go up to like 30 Storm, we kill all of their creatures with Scattershot, and then we play Last Rites, and this lets us discard like some useless cards to empty their hand. And so they have no creatures in play, nothing in hand, and we just need to attack 5 turns with like some 5 toughness creatures against like elves or Stompy. It's pretty likely we can get there and win the game that way. You could bring in Weather the Storm too if you need, but looking at it more, it's probably not even necessary. So you can either keep in Rolling Thunder as a way to like, if they don't have 2 mana up, you can just kill them. So you can like just bring in these 2 cards and maybe cut Serum Visions because you're trying to go off quicker, and maybe like a Brain Spoil or something like that, and then kill their creatures and then just put a bunch of dudes into play. It's kind of the way I would sideboard that. And then if they're not holding up 2 mana, then you can just kill them the normal way and it's not a problem. There are other sideboard strategies. Exile and I have kind of been talking about these, where instead of winning off the Rolling Thunder, you try and go for Infinite Mill. So I'm going to walk through those a little bit. They're not fully fleshed out yet, but I'm going to show you kind of how they work. All right, so here's an example of an Infinite Mill combo that we've been testing. And the important things of these combos are we don't want them to interact with the graveyard in any way, because Fairy Macabre can just kind of get you. And that's a very common sideboard card for some of these creature decks. They also should go truly infinite or basically infinite, and they should not take up that many card slots. So here's kind of the best one that I think we've come up with. We're kind of fine-tuning this. Basically all you need is like, let's say this is the 4 card slot. I'm going to talk about it in a second, but basically what we're looking for is a ideally 3 card, but sometimes 4 card combo that can win the game through Weather the Storm or Prismatic Strands, does not touch the graveyard, and it can play around ideally Gutshot. And so this one can kind of cover all of those. So we're going to kind of walk through how it works. So we have Jace's Erasure. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills. That's pretty straightforward. Whirlpool Rider. When it enters the battlefield, you shuffle the cards from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. So you can kind of see what we're getting at. We basically cast a Whirlpool Rider. We have like a big hand, maybe like 15 cards. Mill our opponent for 15. And then we keep casting the Whirlpool Rider. So the way we do that is with Cavern Harpy. So when it enters the battlefield, you return a blue or black creature to its owner's hand. And then, I guess this can't beat Gutshot. Okay, well this is why we're testing it, right? Yeah, so it enters, bounce a creature, and then you can pay a life to return it to its owner's hand. So you bounce a creature, return it, bounce a creature, return it. And that's basically, we can just keep casting Whirlpool Rider. Blood Celebrant, I'm hoping to be able to cut this, but at the moment, there's a lot of blue mana required to kind of complete this loop. So Blood Celebrant is a way for us to make sure we have enough blue mana to go off. So I'm going to go into a Goldfish and get to the point where I'm ready to combo off, and then I'll show you guys how to do it. All right, so we're at this position, we've gone off, and we're kind of set up for the infinite combo, and this is going to be actually a very easy loop. Is this a May? Yeah, you may. Okay, so we have a very large hand. We've kind of drawn most of our deck, and we have all of the combo pieces assembled. So we can, I don't even think we need a Blood Celebrant. And I'm testing to see if that's even necessary, but we'll see what happens. So we cast Jace's Erasure. That's step 1. Jace's Erasure in play, basically whenever we draw a card, opponent mills. So now we are going to just play a Whirlpool Rider. We have 20 cards in hand. Actually, I think we can just... Maybe we don't need that much. This might be too easy. I can actually cast another Rush of Knowledge here. And so that's another benefit of this is if you have Jace's Erasure in play as you're going off, you don't even have to combo off that much. But I'm just going to say no because I would be milling myself. Always no, always yield. So this is going to be triggering, but for the sake of this demonstration, we're not going to show it. So I have 27 cards in my hand right now. So I can just cast Whirlpool Rider. Oh, I want to cast the Harpy as well, because I want that. So we can bounce Shambling Attendant, it doesn't matter. So now we have Harpy in play, we can just Manamorphose to get more blue. Now we cast Whirlpool Rider. And that's going to, we're going to shuffle our hand into our library and then draw 26 cards. So opponent is going to mill 26. So we do this. It's not going to show the triggers because we're yielding through them, but that we could have milled our opponent for 26. Now we pay 1 life, return Cavern Harpy. It's somewhere. We play Cavern Harpy. This is going to bounce Whirlpool Rider, and then we replay him. And you can kind of keep doing that kind of as much as you need, and as much blue mana as you have. Blood Celebrant is there basically to filter this black to blue so you can keep going. But we have 26 cards in hand, so now we mill our opponent for 26. And they've been milled for 52. That's more than enough to win the game. So that's how this combo works. It's pretty robust, and you're playing against ideally like a green, like Stompy or something, so they don't really have a way to interact. And it doesn't use the graveyard, so there's no way they can like Fairy Macabre you. So this is kind of something we're testing, and it's worth knowing because Weather Storm is kind of a problem. But if you can find a better way to do it, that'd be great because every card slot matters, and I don't love Blood Celebrant, but it might just be necessary because I don't know how often you're going to have 26 cards in hand. It's more likely you'll have like 15. If you look at my other Fishelbrand videos, I usually had like between 12 and like 16 cards in hand. So doing this about 4 times is what you would need. So the blue mana is kind of important. There's another blue. Anyway, that is probably going to do it for this video. I'll link you to all my other Fishelbrand videos if you haven't seen them, of me like actually playing the deck. I think the best way to do it is just experience. Just go into MTGO, or if you're playing at home, goldfish, goldfish, goldfish. Think of weird situations that could come up and try and play around them, and practice this sideboard technique. It's not super hard. This one's pretty easy, right? You just keep going. Pay life, return. Let's add blue. Cast Cavern Harpy. You get the picture, right? Bounce it. Keep going. Yeah, and I should have a video up with this deck soon. I've just been having fun playing other decks, but I know a lot of people were asking for this, so it'll be there. See you guys soon.